What if I told you that the governments of Scotland, England, and Wales were experimenting on children? I'm Rachel. I'm a public and social policy consultant, and amongst other things, I want to scrap the two-child limit. Now, the two-child limit was introduced in 2017, and it was introduced under a banner of fairness. It affects around 1.7 million children in the UK who live in just under 500,000 families. Families with third or subsequent children are not entitled to additional payments under universal credits and child tax credits. It's about 67.57 a week, which is less than £10 a day that they're not getting for children's number 3, 4, 5, and so on. And before you come at me in the comments, 59% of these families are in work and 70% of them are white. The policy saves around 2.5 to 3 billion a year, but actually we're just shifting these costs elsewhere. There are no savings. These costs are shifted to the NHS, to schools, to food banks, to social care, to other public services. The long-term social and economic impacts of child poverty long outweigh any 1, 2, or 3 billion short-term savings that we save every year. Now, in Scotland, child poverty rates are around 24%, and in Northern Ireland, it's 23%. But in England and Wales, it's about 30 to 31%. That means in England and Wales, around 1 in 3 children are living in poverty, and that increases to around 44%. So 4 in 10 children are living in poverty when we have a single parent family or a lone parent family, or where there are 3 children living in the property. Why the difference? Well, in Northern Ireland, there are things like lower house prices, and the Northern Ireland government have mitigated certain impacts of other welfare cuts like the benefit cap and the bedroom tax. And in Scotland, they've done some brilliant stuff around child poverty through the Scottish welfare payment. And from next year, they're going to be kind of neutralising the two-child limit by allowing people in Scotland to apply for top-ups if they are affected by the two-child limit. As a result of this, Scotland's child poverty rates will continue to decline, whereas in England and Wales, where we're not doing this, these child poverty rates will continue to increase. But so far, this is all things, abstract things like child poverty rates and statistics. Where's the experiment, Rachel? The consequences of a life lived in poverty are dire. In terms of physical health, children being brought up in poverty are more likely to have things like asthma, diabetes. They're more likely to experience obesity. They're more likely to experience poor nutrition. The effects of biological poverty embeds itself in the body. It also affects the brain. In terms of brain development, MRI studies have shown that children brought up in poverty have less grey matter than children brought up in more affluent households in things like language development, decision making, and learning ability. The stress of growing up in chronic poverty affects things. We're rewiring children's brains here, things like emotion and learning. In terms of education, children being brought up in poverty by the age of 5 can be somewhere between 9 and 12 months behind in terms of cognitive development than children not being brought up in poverty. Children in poverty are more likely to struggle with concentration, attendance, and emotional well-being at school. Instead of closing, these gaps actually compound over time, shaping adults from the childhood poverty that they lived in. In terms of mental health, growing up in chronic poverty can double, the NHS thinks it can double your propensity for ill mental health. Things like anxiety, depression, and trauma-related symptoms. And it's actually shortening lives in terms of life expectancy. People growing up in poverty, people living in poverty, live shorter lives. So the two-child limit is not just a welfare cut. This is a social experiment that we will be studying for decades to come. It's kind of like a natural controlled experiment whereby the differences that these policies are making now will be seen for years and years and years. The two-child limit might not have been designed as a social experiment, but this absolutely is what it is. The results just won't be in for a while. Scotland is demonstrating the difference that can be made when we actually put policies in place to protect children. In England and Wales, we are seeing the opposite. Poverty is not just about money. It's about mental well-being, learning, physical health, life expectancy. The quality of life of people growing up in poverty is poorer. They're not just financially poorer, their lives are poorer. Every child that is pushed into poverty today by things like the two-child limit will experience its effects into adulthood. This isn't chance, it is an experiment, and it is absolutely time to end this experiment. We must see the two-child limit go. We need better policy.